Okay, thank you, colleagues. Can I welcome you to the meeting of the Planning Committee on the 4th of February 2026. I will start with the live stream and announcement, which I'm beginning to learn to speak without actually reading it. But good evening, everyone, and welcome to the planning meeting of Gravesham Borough Council. I intend to go through some housekeeping rules. This meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and recorded. Recordings will be uploaded to YouTube within 2 working days, where it can be accessed by everyone. Members, please use the microphone in front of you when talking and ensure that you turn your microphone off once you finish speaking. Another member or officer will not be able to speak if your microphone is still on. Please note that the council's visual equipment may on occasions focus on or near the public gallery area. Therefore, those in attendance at this meeting may be filmed or recorded. Attendance at this meeting signifies your agreement to this. If, as a member of the public, you do not wish to be filmed or recorded, please inform a council member in attendance and we will try to assist where reasonably possible. On hearing the fire alarm, we ask all attendees to immediately evacuate the building. Please evacuate via the nearest fire exits and make your way to Community Square outside of the main reception doors. Thank you. So that then brings us on to the agenda itself. Item number 2, apologies for absence.
We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Leslie Pearton and Councillor Lynn Milner. Councillors Alan Metcalfe and Deborah Croxton are attending as their substitutes. We have also received an apology from Councillor Samir Jassal.
Thank you. Can I sign the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on 14th of January 2026? I'm looking for people. Thank you. I've seen 1 and I've seen 2. So proposer and seconder, I will sign those minutes at the end of the meeting. Declarations of interest. I declare any interest members may have in the items contained on this agenda. When declaring an interest, a member must state what their interest is. I'm looking around. I note, it's worth pointing out, but a member of this committee, Councillor Les Pearton, is actually acting as a ward councillor and speaking in that capacity during the course of this meeting. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? None. Thank you. That brings us on then to consider whether any items in Part A of the agenda should be considered in private or items in Part B in public. There's no reason, in my opinion, to consider any of these items in private. So that then brings us on to planning applications for determination by the committee. We have 3 applications here, and we will take them in the order that they are in the agenda. So starting off with the Neuralite, then Coachfields, and then Vale Road. So moving on to 6A, which is item 20250721, Neuralite Industrial Estate, Canal Road, Higham, Rochester. Can I ask for this to be introduced, please? Richard.
Thank you, Chair. The application before the committee this evening is for Neuralite, and this relates to the removal of conditions 4, 6 and 12 and the variation of condition 7 attached to Planning Permission 2019-290. Before I go into detail, I have been made aware that in the description of the application, it makes the wording permanent TRO. For the absolute avoidance of doubt, it is a temporary TRO and the report is written on the basis of a temporary TRO. Thank you. 2019-0290 was for the importation of inert materials to cap and landscape the historic asbestos landfill site, to demolish the existing buildings of the Neurolite Industrial Estate, and the construction of 11 purpose-built industrial units with associated infrastructure. The application site, as shown on the screen there, is located within the Greenbelt to the northwest of the settlement of Lower Higham. Access to the site is via a rural road known as Canal Road and is around 1 mile in length. In addition to serving the application site, the road also provides access to a smaller number of residential dwellings, Beckley Hill industrial units, small holding and Hoo Junction railway yard. The site can be divided into two areas as shown on the slide. The western side, which contains the former landfill site for asbestos, and the eastern side, which contains a former asbestos factory and associated land. Asbestos-containing material is widespread through the site, but most prevalent in the former western portion, which was the former landfill site. The above condition of the site, the above condition of the site provides an ongoing health issue to human exposure. Without systematic management, future site users could be potentially exposed to asbestos fibres from the site. Equally, part of the national cycle routes and public rights of way run along the northern boundary of the site, which is heavily used by members of the public. In order to address the asbestos, a cap and contain method would be used to deal with the majority of the site. Importation of a range of inert material to the site would be used to form a containment layer over the existing asbestos contamination. For the absolute avoidance of doubt, asbestos will not be removed from the site. As it is a Section 73 application, it allows the development to go ahead without the compliance of certain conditions. Whatever the result of an application for removal or variation of conditions, the original permission will continue. Only the removal and variation conditions can be considered by the board tonight. 2019-0290 has been implemented, and this has been confirmed, and the implemented scheme is for the following: importation of inert materials to cap and landscape the historic asbestos landfill, demolish existing buildings, removal of hydrocarbon pollution layers, creation of new utility infrastructure, and the construction of 11 industrial units. The benefit of the approval, as we discussed in the 2021 committee, was that the site at the moment has no control through the planning process, and the scheme, as approved, will bring conditions to restrict the hours of use and the operation to the site. Just for recap, this shows the approved layout of the site. The western side is the former asbestos landfill, and that becomes open space, and the industrial units are built on the right-hand side, where the existing buildings are. Turning to this application, you have the removal of conditions 4, 6 and 12. Condition 4 details additional passing places along Lower Rochester Road. Condition 6 details of traffic signal controls along Canal Road, and Condition 12 sought to secure the implementation of archaeological works on site. Variation of Condition 7. Condition 7 originally required the implementation of a TRO, Traffic Regulation Order, to enact a one-way routing strategy only for HGV lorries associated with Neurolite, not for all traffic. Condition 12 talked about the implementation of archaeological works, and this application was requiring, obviously, archaeological works to be undertaken. And what has come forward is doing archaeological works on site would not be possible because there's a no-dig policy on the site. Condition 6 required full details of traffic signal controls, including the location and the duration of signal controls along the Canal Road. The applicant has confirmed that whilst they view this condition to be duplication of what KCC require, they understand the desire from Gravesham to ensure highway improvements are provided in a timely manner, and as such, they have accepted that condition 6 can be retained and that this condition will not be removed from the application. The removal of condition 4 and variation of condition 7 has what's generated a lot of concern from locals. The 9 of the passing bays that were proposed cannot be implemented. 9 of the proposed passing bays are not within highway land, and the applicant is unable to bring those forward. Therefore, the one-way route, if went ahead with just the HGV lights and Neuralite, would mean there'd be ongoing conflict between other road users. Therefore, the alternative proposal is to require temporary TRO for all vehicles, and this would tie in with condition 5, which is the phasing condition. Oops, sorry. Sorry about this. Human error. Sorry, 1 second. So as such, the passing bays cannot be implemented, and the only option going forward would be a TRO for all vehicles. This would then remove there being a conflict between HGVs for Neuralite and other vehicles. It's worth noting that a number of neighbours have written in to make comment about crashes on the roads between vehicles meeting head on. And this is exactly what we're trying to avoid through the TRO for all vehicles. This slide here shows the proposed TRO routes. In the report before you, we've got the information from the agent that explains the increase in traffic time for people affected by the one-way system. Essentially, a small portion of people are affected by the TRO, which is temporary, and we're talking a matter of minutes in terms of traffic journeys being increased. Now, the TRO, the condition for the TRO is essentially saying that no works can commence any further until the applicant has applied to the Highways Authority for a TRO. At that point, the Highways Authority will undertake a formal consultation where all parties can make comments to the Highways Authority. The condition by the Borough Council here is to ensure that works commence without there being a danger to highway safety. As such, the recommendation is the application delegated to the head of planning for planning permission subject to the description being amended to remove reference to condition 6 traffic controls, the finalisation of planning conditions, including making any necessary modification, deletion or addition to the proposed conditions, and an informative and await the comments from Medway's Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. If I can just say how I intend to proceed with this application, I will first of all invite members of the committee for any points of information, explanation that they may have. Then I will invite ward councillors for a similar, whether they have any points they wish to seek to clarify, but it is only clarification and information at this point, and then any other councillors who are present at the meeting. Once we've dealt with any questions we may have, then we will move to the members of the public who are for the application, of which there are 2 speakers. They will have 3 minutes and they can outline their position, and the same for those 3 people who are against the application. After the 3 minutes are up, guided by the lights, they can answer any questions from the members of the committee or other relevant councillors. At the end of that point, we will then move to ward councillors who may want to make a position themselves, and then to either of the leader of the council or the leader of the opposition, and they again can make representation. And then it will be down to members of the committee to discuss this report. can I remind you that we are dealing with the Transport Regulation Order. We are not dealing with the application which was considered, I think, in 2021. That has been determined. So we are dealing with the Transport Regulation Order. Thank you. Right. I ask any members of the committee, do they want points of clarification or information?
Thank you, Chair. This is really just a point of clarification. Under the summary of reasons for recommendations, it mentions the number of HGV vehicles will be the same, which is a maximum of 88 journeys, 44 each way. It doesn't specify if that's daily or weekly. Thank you.
That's daily.
I see nobody else. I'm looking across at any other councillors. I see nobody there. Right, then I will move to the two speakers for the application. So I invite the agent, Chris Lee, if you'd like to come forward. You'll be guided by the lights. You have 3 minutes. And at the end of 3 minutes, at the end with 1 minute remaining, you'll have an amber light. When the red light comes on, I will ask you to stop. And then you can I will invite any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome the opportunity to speak directly to members of the committee. My name is Christopher Lee, and I am the lead consultant working with LAG Properties, and I've been intimately involved with this project since the beginning, which I believe was 2016. The Neuralite site has sat with its loose asbestos fibres and dust under a rather totally inadequate shallow grave for over 100 years. The old asbestos landfill, waiting until neglect, time, wind and burrowing animals release those fibres into the air and potentially into human lungs. It's no coincidence that this part of Kent still bears the scars of its industrial legacy with asbestos manufacturing, one of the most hazardous and highly regulated pollutants in the UK. The industry centred on the Medway towns has resulted in this part of Kent having one of the highest incidences of asbestos-related deaths, the only dedicated medical unit for the care of patients with asbestos-related illnesses, and a unique concentration of legal practices specialising in the litigation against incidences of these diseases as well. Allied to that, you have a dilapidated and unregulated industrial estate not able to provide local jobs that it has the potential to. As you've already outlined, in 2021, this committee passed an application, a major part of which was to deal with the legacy and to finally cap the old landfill. A range of options were explored as to how such capping material could be brought to the site. In lorries and by road was the only economically and practicable option, resulting in the necessary daily movements of HGVs. We did, and we continue to fully understand that those HGV movements were always going to be an imposition on local residents. That permission also contained an attempt, through the planning conditions, to mitigate the impacts of those movements, essentially through a HGV-only one-way routing and a number of passing bays. The specific wording of the passing bay condition was not incidental or accidental, but specific, significant and material, namely that the indicated passing bays shown on the design were to be on the public highway, and initial mapping had shown that to be the case. Subsequent mapping, three-dimensional mapping, indicated that a number of these passing bays were now on private land. This placed the project exactly where it did not want to be, and it sought the wording of the condition explicitly to avoid. Namely that we were creating opportunities for private landowners to hold ransom strips or blocking strips. The site owner has a strong local contractor partner already in place to begin works on this critical capping phase. If this application is approved, then we have at last a clear line of sight through to these remediation works, and beyond that, the new workspace. Then we can close another chapter on Kent's toxic asbestos legacy and support much needed local economic growth with up to 600 new jobs in the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, and well in time. Colleagues and members of the committee, any points of clarification or information? I'm seeing none. I'm looking across at other councillors. I'm seeing none. You've escaped, Mr. Lee. Thank you very much for your contribution. That then brings me on to Ian Wickett, Highways consultant working on behalf of the applicant. Again, the same situation, be guided by the lights, 3 minutes. When the amber light comes on, you have 1 minute left. And when it turns red, I will ask you to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ian Wickett. I'm a project director at SCP with almost 30 years of highways and engineering experience. And I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant in support of the revised traffic management proposals for the redevelopment of Newlight Industrial Estate. The original planning condition was imposed on the basis of proposed highway works to introduce new passing bays along Lower Rochester Road and Gore Green Road to allow for two-way general traffic but one-way for HGVs. And as already mentioned, subsequent investigations into the engineering requirements and land ownership has identified it's not possible to construct these in many of the locations. And without the full complement of passing bays, residents would still be disrupted by those oncoming HGVs on a regular basis. The proposed alternative put before you does not change the volume of HGVs travelling to and from the application site. It's to secure a mechanism for vehicle control that minimises disruption for residents and businesses alike. This has been discussed with officers at Kent County Council and would implement a one-way order for all vehicles along the two routes. This option would be continually monitored and would be on a rolling basis reviewed fully and formally with consultation every 18 months. There will be another opportunity to review and comment on the details of the proposals when the process formally commences. This application only establishes the principle at this stage. An assessment has been undertaken to understand the journey impacts for those residents and businesses. For the vast majority of users, journeys will be uninterrupted and will flow better than they do currently. However, a very small number of residents and businesses will have a longer journey of at least 1 kilometre to and from local destinations. And all of those affected will have less than 5 minutes extra on their journey, which is a limited difference when considering long distance journeys. The alternative without the one-way routing or passing bays would likely result in delays to all local residents now being proposed, and it would affect everyone rather than a handful of people. Overall, the proposed one-way arrangements are not expected to have a detrimental effect on local residents or businesses, with the increased distance for a small number of users being offset by improved reliability of journey times along these routes. And the continual monitoring and rolling review will ensure that the operation of the one-way routing remains effective and can be adjusted where necessary to minimise disruption.
Thank you. Just in time. Right, Colin. Any points of clarification or information? None, and I see none from me, councillors present. Thank you, Mr. Wickett. That's so kind. Right, we now move to the three speakers against the application, starting with Councillor Elizabeth Jeffrey, Vice Chair, Higham Parish Council. If you'd like to come forward, Liz. And once again, you have 3 minutes, guided by the lights. When it turns amber, you have 1 minute left, and you must finish on the red light. Thank you.
Right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair. We wondered, these have been brought forward by local residents. Has sufficient consideration been given to local businesses and to farms in the area? Oakley, Lily Church, Little Mockbeggar, to name but a few, and other businesses. One farmer wanting to access his field numerous times each year and is 200 metres away from his farm building would have to make a detour of nearly a mile, using extra time, fuel, increasing traffic with slow-moving combine harvester and other large tractors and equipment. Exiting from Buckland Road, which is the smaller lane that joins the lower joins Gore Green Road, motorists wishing to turn into Lower Harm are not able to, and they have to go to the B2000, turn right into the Lower Rochester Road and then turn sharply at Church Street and Railway Street junction to access Gore Green Road. Speaking of this junction, supposing a large HGV travels the Lower Rochester Road and needs to turn into Gore Green Road for access to make deliveries or collections from the farms or businesses. The turning space is not adequate, and where would he go to turn round? If these lorries travel past the Buckland passed along to the B2000 to the Buckland Road end in Cliff, the road is undulating and the passing spaces are limited and hazardous. HGVs travelling Gore Green Road will suffer delays gaining access to the congested B2000, and turning at that junction is tight, and several accidents have already occurred in that area. Delays will also be caused when there is a traffic accident, as there's no suitable exits on either route. And neither roads have street lighting. And going on to Canal Road, where it just joins at Church Street, only 2 days ago there was an accident between a HGV and a resident's parked car. As a PC, we would like some reassurances that if members are likely to approve, that conditions are imposed to mitigate residents' concerns, and that the parish is supported with enforcing these conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, points of clarification or information for members of the committee. Councillor Croxton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Liz. I actually travel the B2000 every week. I'm going to from Rice Street. There is already heavy goods vehicle traffic along there, but I've never encountered an issue, and I go early in the morning and come back, mid-morning, because there is another HGV site just before the village of Cliff, where lorries are turning left into that particular location. I don't see a problem per se, because HGV is already using the B2000, and having gone down the lanes when I've cut through, it is difficult if it's two-way traffic with cars and with farm vehicles and heavy goods.
Councillor, a question.
Apologies. Thank you. No comment.
Do you want to phase it as a comment or question?
I guess my question is, what is the concern of the traffic using the B2000 to access the one-way system? Thank you.
Can't really answer that, apart from saying that when you come out the Gore Green Road and you want to turn right and come up towards Mockbeggar, that is difficult sometimes, and you can sit there for a good 5 minutes. Sometimes I've sat there and waited for a space, even in a car. So because the traffic is quite fast on that B2000, and you only need a minor accident or something, and that road is completely log jammed.
Thank you. I'm looking around at any other clarification, information, questions? No. Thank you very much, Liz. This brings us to the second speaker against the application, Mr. David Martin, if you'd like to come forward. Yeah,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Martin,
Chair.
the same position, be guided by the lights. 3 minutes.
I'm sorry if what I say is going to be a bit scattered and unplanned, but I've spent the last 2 days in A&E with my wife, so my mind isn't fully addressing the issue in hand. I live at Dairy Farm House, which is on the corner of Lower Rochester Road and Church Street. And in this sketch, which was part of the November additions to the application, I'm here where my finger is. Traffic coming along Lower Rochester Road and wanting to go up Gore Green Road towards back towards B2000 has to do a 3-point turn. The road is the two roads combined are so narrow that at the junction you only get normal transit vans can do the hairpin bend. Anything larger has to do a 3-point turn, and lorries, when I'm cutting my front grass, I observe, go on to Checker Street, reverse up into Church Street, and then drive back in the other direction. So the suggestion in the officer, well, in the RSK report, that traffic will use Sandhill Road. That road is only 3 meters wide, and to get a tractor and trailer or an HGV to go down it, you would again need to do a shunt, and that is not a sensible use. The proposal seems to ignore the fact that it's a rural area and the main businesses roundabout are farms, and we have a lot of tractors and trailers at harvest time and lorries, HGVs, 40-tonners delivering fertiliser and seed at planting time and then collecting the grain afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Please stay seated. Any questions for Mr. Martin? I see. Oh, sorry. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I'm sorry to hear about your wife, first of all. I hope she's okay. Just want to check something. For as far as you are aware, is it the case that there seems to be a lot of affected local farms and businesses? Is it the case that there's been no additional consultation beyond just the simple planning application, as far as you're aware?
I'm not aware of any other consultation, and no pre-TRO work has been done. As Mr. Hart has said, you're still awaiting comments from Medway. Medway are actually the Highways Authority for the end of Lily Church Road, where it meets Town Road, the B2000. So it will be up to that. They would need to join in and also decide what happens at that junction to allow people to readily exit. I would agree with Councillor Jeffries that you can sit there for what feels like hours waiting for both lanes of traffic to become free so you can cross the road and turn right.
Thank you. Can I ask a clarification on that, Mr. Hart? Where does Medway stand on this, and how influential may they be?
Thank you, Chair. I think on this plan, there is actually, if I can get the dot up, where you got Little Church Road, you can see the border between Medway and Gravesham. Medway have been consulted. They haven't responded yet. It's a very small portion of that road that's impacted. My colleague's just going to highlight it. It's just that area here, which is in Medway. essentially the TRO would be through the highways authorities, which I believe would be an application to both Medway and both to KCC. So I think the applicant would have to do 2 applications, and you would hope that both KCC and Medway would communicate on this and come to a conclusion. But essentially, it'd be 2 TRO applications.
Want to come in, Shazan?
Thank you, Chair. It's probably worth just mentioning that the original application already accepted the concept of these roads being used as a one-way route for HGVs alone. So the HGVs would still be, if the original permission as it stood was implemented, and well, it has been implemented, but in its entirety and the conditions discharged, as a route, this would still be a one-way route for HGVs. The only real difference between this application and the original application in terms of the condition is that rather than it being solely for HGVs, this is seeking all vehicles to be tied in with the TRO, because as the speakers and Mr. Hart have already stated, it's not possible to deliver the passing bays for the other users. So rather than having a conflict between the HGVs following the one-way route, what this is and the other vehicles coming from the opposite direction, what this is proposing is that effectively all vehicles follow the one-way route, not just the HGVs. But if the original condition, as it's worded, was implemented, the HGVs would still be utilising this route.
Thank you for clarification. I'm looking around and I see nobody else. So thank you, Mr. Martin. You may escape, and I do wish your wife well. I would not be surprised. Right. Councillor Wardle.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a point of clarification on something Richard just said. If we were minded to accept this, you're saying that KCC could then knock it out?
Essentially, what this condition is requiring the applicant, before works continue any further, to apply to KCC and Medway for a TRO. That will be subject to a separate application for KCC and Medway, and they will undertake consultation to make their own decision. So ultimately, this condition means you can go no further until you've got TRO in place.
Thank you. Right, so we'll move on to Mr. Michael Field, a local resident. And again, I think you probably understand the way forward now.
I'm going to be as quick as I can. I will quickly add to what I wanted to say. The original proposal, including passing bays, is still viable. It just may cost near like more to introduce it. Government guidelines advise that the following key considerations for planning committees when reviewing TROs. One-way systems increase speed, and the higher speeds can lead to more severe crashes. They increase noise pollution, and they increase normal pollution. These roads have high hedges, narrow lanes, sharp bends. Council should consider if one-way systems have accounted for the reduced visibility. This TRO would increase noise, would increase pollution, and would increase speeds, and it hasn't taken into account the lack of forward visibility. One-way systems often force longer indirect routes impacting residents, local farmers, and needs to be considered. For example, this TRO increases a journey from Cliff to Higham Station by 46%. It forces all Cliff residents to unnecessarily travel through Cliff Woods to get to Higham. It forces all Cliff and Cliff Woods residents onto the dangerous section of the B2000. That stretch of the B2000 has unfortunately seen several severe accidents that required emergency services, including an air ambulance. In the last 5 years, 28 vehicles have been involved in accidents on that road, 8 considered serious and 1 fatality. Additionally, due to the houses being built on Cliff Woods, there's been substantial increase in the HGVs on that stretch of road, and this has resulted in the road condition seriously deteriorating and includes an HGV falling over onto its side because of the road collapsing. Council should consider that changes affect emergency service response times. This TRO will undoubtedly increase emergency service response times. Engagement levels for this type of scheme should involve in-person events and direct communication with the affected properties. This has not happened. For example, some residents living in Gore Green Road will not be able to leave or return to their property without putting themselves at risk of collision or breaking the proposed one-way TRO. Have they been spoken to? In addition, there are approximately 20 equestrian facilities in the surrounding villages. This TRO puts horse riders at risks and makes it almost impossible for riders to leave and return to their equestrian facility safely and without breaking the TRO. Have they been spoken to? According to a popular cycling app, this road has been cycled on over 13,000 times, and there will be 1,000 more that do not use an app to record their journey. Has any attempt been made to contact local cycling clubs or speak to residents who use the countryside road for cycling? Impact of Medway councils and its residents. This TRO encroaches on Medway's roads that are owned by them. It forces traffic onto Medway roads. It increases the risk and highway costs that Medway Council will be responsible for. It substantially impacts Medway Council's residents, in fact, probably more so than KCC residents. For these reasons, no decision should be made without Medway Council officially being part of the application review. In conclusion, the proposed TRO displaces traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Colleagues, councillors on committee, any questions or points of clarification? Other colleagues or councillors? No. Thank you, Mr. Field. You may resume.
Can I have one more question?
No. Right. That then leaves me with looking across at local ward councillors, all of whom are able to speak. I believe you have up to 5 minutes. Is that right? Thank you. Who wishes to speak? Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. We were speaking on behalf of all 3 ward councillors tonight, Councillor Ellen Ashington and Councillor Jordan Mead. We are speaking against this application. It must be noted that there are 146 objections, including Shoreham Parish Council, Higham Parish Council, joint ward councillors, and 2 from West Kent Public Rights of Way, Dickens Country Protection Society, and I hope that the committee have read fully all the importance of all their content because of the contents in there that they have. This versus 2 no objections from National Highways based in Guildford, no connection to Higham and the daily life. 1 no objection from KCC Highways, which is narrowly focused on lacking in understanding the consideration of the constrainable negative impact. 1 abstention from KCC Ecological Advice Service. Now we move on to the history of the site. Permission to the original 2019 application was granted despite tremendous opposition by the parishioners of Higham, especially the closest neighbouring residents. The subsequent approval of non-material amendment 2023 was granted with conditions. The 3rd application questions whether the whole application from the beginning is feasibly viable if by keeping amendments the original conditions, strong conditions were attached to ensure the safety and amenities of local residents and other road users and protect them from harm, of which 3 they now wish to remove and 1 they wish to vary. There has been no consideration for the general public with the public engagement or consultation with residents. Parishioners, road users from the wider community, as we've heard tonight from different other sources, including Cliff and Cliff Woods, Wainscott Sean, the applicant has been quoting saying it is necessary evil. But it is the residents and the wider community that are affected by this necessary evil being expected to have their lives disrupted to accommodate the facilitate as a poorly located commercial enterprise. Therefore, the community importance is paramount. The amendment to condition 7 of the TRO and the removal of the condition 12, archaeological, could potentially face Gravesham Borough Council with 2 legal challenges. Condition 4, it is strongly argued that landowners' approaches have not been fully investigated or have followed up the absence of replies. Such a removal raises the question that the ability to meet this condition could render the whole application void. Condition 7, to vary traffic regulation order. 88 lorries per day is estimated, 44 in, 44 out. This is in addition to the 100 plus commercial vehicles from RS skips using the designated lorry route by Checker Street, Lower Rochester Road and the B2000, and all existing traffic from Neuralite, Network Rail and Bickley Hill based in Canal Road. One-way systems are renowned to make traffic faster, as we've heard tonight from one of our speakers. I refer to the substrates report dated 19th of August 2025. There are no pavements. Many houses are directly onto the road and enormous residential parking needs access. In addition, condition is for the works traffic only, comprising the public to be affected by this application varied to a TRO for all traffic is unreasonable.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
I'm looking to see if either of the other ward councillors wants to make a statement. No, I'm now looking to see if any other councillor wants to contribute. I've seen nothing.
Jordan.
Oh, sorry, Jordan, can I clarify? Are you speaking as a ward councillor or as the leader of the opposition?
Sorry.
Thank you. As leader of the opposition, please.
You realise then that you are unlimited time.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you. And thank you to members of the committee and all those who have spoken this evening. I think it's incredibly clear that there is huge public concern in Higham for the effects that this application could potentially have on residents. I also think there is an outstanding clarification that's needed, and I direct this question at the officers, please, as to what would happen in the circumstances, hypothetically speaking, of course, if KCC and Medway Council were to deny a TRO. I'd like to seek some clarity on where that would leave the status of the overall application. But just to conclude from what the points that Councillor Pearson were making on behalf of the residents of Higham, we heard tonight the concerns that were raised quite eloquently by Councillor Liz on behalf of the Parish Council concerning the real threat that there is to residents when it comes to the lack of street lighting and also some of the dangerous manoeuvres that lorries would have to make on some of these very tight stretches of roads. So what we would like to ask for this evening is that after all objections have been heard, the committee, if they are minded to grant the application, that we formally request that consideration should be given on each individual amendment as to whether they are deemed acceptable, and that the whole application should be refused if one of those amendments is not considered to be practical. When it comes to the actual temporary nature of the order, I think again we just need some clarity that it is going to be temporary, and I'd like the officers please to outline how the nature of that temporary order is actually effective, because it is not clear in the papers. There is confusion as to when the county council would need to reconsult, and again it would be useful just to hear when those time limits are in place. Another concern that we have heard in the village, and Councillor Jeffreys touched upon this, is when it comes down to the practical enforcement of these conditions that the committee would be minded to make. And one of those is, how on earth do we actually come to enforce a condition of 88 vehicle movements a day? And it needs to be clear as to the practicalities of enforcing a condition of that nature, and whether or not it's actually practical and feasible to enforce that condition. For example, are there going to be enforcement cameras? What sort of signage is going to be put in place when it comes to directing people? Because if the TRO is granted, if there is not adequate consultation with residents, if there's not adequate signage in place, and indeed if this is not enforced in the way that it should be, which in my view and that of my ward councillors is through enforcement cameras, then we could end up with a real serious risk of there being accidents occurring on this site because of the TRO. When it comes to the previous conditions of the original application from 2021, I believe one of those conditions was to have wheel washing facilities in place for every vehicle movement. And again, I would just like to seek clarity from our officers tonight that that original condition is in place, because although we must remember that the vehicles are coming on site to deliver hardcore and rubble to cap the site, they are of course leaving, as we've heard tonight, a highly contaminated site. And I just want the residents of Higham to have that reassurance that wheels are going to be washed to limit the risk of asbestos particles going onto our village roads. And I'll stop there, Chairman. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll ask for clarification on those points in a minute. Councillor Burden, do you want to? No. Right. The number of questions raised there. Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Chair. So there is a condition which addresses wheel washing, and that condition isn't being removed or altered, so that stays. There is a condition that deals with the construction management plan that would deal with enforcement of traffic flows as part of the construction period, and that's not yet been discharged, so the details would have to be dealt with as part of the discharge of conditions application for that particular application. And with regards to what happens with the temporary order, I think it's set out to some extent in section 7.17, 7.18 of the report. So highways authorities are only allowed to impose temporary orders for an 18-month period, and if they require the order to be of a greater length, they have to make an application for the Secretary of State. Now, the reality is, in this situation, the applicant is only seeking a TRO to cover the construction period. There's a separate condition as part of the original decision which deals with phasing that also hasn't yet been discharged, and the reality is when the conditions are being discharged, the TRO in reality will reflect the phasing plan that the LPA agrees in the future. And that's why there's a range provided within the report to say, well, the minimum period could roughly be X and the maximum period could be Y. I believe from memory that's 3 to 7 years approximately. And it would be up to KCC and Medway as the highways authorities to effectively agree that 18-month period initially, and then to make an application to the Secretary of State to extend it, or if there's a gap between phases, for example, and only an 18-month order is required at any one time, the applicant would have to stop works, make an application to KCC again. They would then go through the hoops again to issue a TRO. I think one of the key things to say is as the LPA, we're not the ones issuing the TRO. So when KCC and Medway are going through that process, they will need to consult. People, again, will be able to provide their views. I think one of your queries, Councillor Mead, was what would happen if said TROs were refused. As set out within the report, in effect, under a Section 73 application, you will have the original planning permission, and this permission would sit alongside it. So that if they couldn't implement this permission with this particular set of conditions, they could always fall back on the original.
Thank you. I've seen Councillor Burden.
Sorry. Sorry to come back in. Just a question, really. I'm interested in the junction with the B2000 at both points. Bear in mind, one's definitely Medway, one's possibly ours and Kent. With the TRO, would that enable any junction improvement sight lines, picking up the points earlier about lorries and the speed getting onto that B2000? They're not the fastest vehicles to move. Or was that covered in the previous permission? Which obviously that was the designated route. And has that work been done?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader. So my understanding is that no highways improvements were sought for that particular road as part of the original application, and none have been sought as part of this proposal. So at this moment in time, the answer would be no.
Thank you.
Can I come back? Forgive me, please. Just as a genuine question here. If, as part of the TRO requirement, improvements are needed, can that be done under the TRO, or does it come back for a planning application? I know you've got two authorities involved, so I know it's not straightforward.
It's my understanding, I'm just thinking as I'm talking, it would require a separate application to be made to, for example, KCC for highways improvement works, not because everything would be within the highway limits. So that would be a separate matter. It would be something that I would need to go back to KCC and engage with them on. So subject to the resolution members are considering, if they wouldn't mind me adding that on to the resolution, is something that can be taken into account.
Councillor Mead.
So thank you, Chairman. It's just seeking an additional point of clarity from our officers, please. The National Planning Policy Framework states, and this is in relation to Condition 12, or the proposed removal of Condition 12, that archaeological investigations should take place. Now, our statutory consultee for archaeological investigations is KCC Heritage. They've said that they're happy for that condition to be removed. But does that statement from KCC protect this authority from negating our obligations under the National Planning Policy Framework to cause archaeological investigations to take place? And are we confident that the health and safety advice for the no dig policy on the site, have we seen that, and are we happy that should be removed on that basis? Because I wouldn't want the council to be opening itself up to potential legal challenge just on the response of one consultee. We need to be 100% certain, or our members do when making the decision tonight, that what they are being asked to do is compliant with the updates to the National Planning Policy Framework.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to look over there to the head of legal services to jump in at any moment if she feels she needs to. So the MPPF is a material planning consideration. We are taking the MPPF into account, but we're also taking the risks associated with the site into account. The site is well known to have asbestos contaminants across it. That's been proven through evidence that's been submitted to the LPA, which has been reviewed by colleagues internally, etc. Given the nature of the works proposed, in reality, the vast majority of the site is going to be capped. So there's no actual significant digging taking place. The only digging or cores that will be taken out of the ground will be for the footings of the steel structures. And having liaised with KCC colleagues, my view professionally is that their advice is sound, and I don't believe it puts the LPA at a risk of legal challenge, but I'll pass that query over to Head of Legal Services, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, taking into account the specific nature of the site, as Shazad said, the NPPF is obviously a material consideration, but we are able to depart from that where we have a good reason to do so. Certainly something like asbestos contamination, making that no dig policy necessary would be a sensible reason for depart, and I wouldn't be worried about risk of challenge on that basis.
Somebody who has done some archaeology, I certainly wouldn't want to go near this site. Right, colleagues, I'm now going to open it up to members of the committee for discussion and debate. Anybody wish to start the ball rolling? Councillor Scollard.
Thank you, Chair. What would actually happen to the site if it didn't get capped, one, and two, the existing building that's there that's going to be demolished? Does that have any contamination on that could be carried away? Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair. The site, the landfill on the western side is not capped. There's evidence I've seen it on site of where rabbits have burrowed into the asbestos. There's asbestos on the ground, so the contamination will be ongoing and danger to health to people surrounding the site and on the site. Secondly, the buildings on the site are highly contaminated, and they will all be demolished and will then form part of the capping of the site. So essentially, if we just leave it as it is, the situation will deteriorate and pose a health hazard to the public.
Can I just clarify, come on that point, but without this route transport order, presumably there will be no work on this site, no work can take place, no attempt at capping. Is that fair to say? Because, I mean, I assume most of it, the development here does depend on the transport regulation order. Is that fair?
That's entirely correct, Chair. So if you look at the original application or this application for varying the conditions, both are reliant on a one-way system being introduced for HGVs, but in this instance for all vehicles. And without that, they cannot continue with developing the site.
Councillor Wardle.
Thank you, Chair. Just follow on to your question, really. There's a rail yard there. Why can't some of this stuff be brought in by rail rather than the volume of traffic that we're talking about creating here? Surely it would be a lot easier coming in by rail.
So we have to remember we're only considering the variation of the conditions before the board. So therefore we cannot open the debate up about alternative means. So we can only look at the TRO application. So whilst I understand your concern about the railway yard, we cannot consider that as part of the application tonight. Sorry.
Yes, can I reinforce that? But we are dealing with the TRO. Sorry, Councillor, you've had your chance. I'm really leaving it now just to members of the committee until we resolve to or go to resolution. Any other members of the committee wanting to comment?
Thank you. There was information there that suggested that for many journey times, many journeys are going to be doubled in length by this one-way system for the public. And I was just wondering whether we give consideration to the fact that we've declared a climate emergency here and how that doesn't really send the right message that we've got obviously net zero ambitions as a council, and we're facilitating something that doubles journey times for one of what is the highest producers of carbon, obviously being road traffic.
Just to be clear, obviously, as we explained, the health hazards of the asbestos outweigh the increased journey times on the locals. So we did balance it all up, but ultimately the impact to human health outweighs a journey time of between 3 to 5 minutes for locals, which are quite limited in numbers. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott, I've seen you.
Thank you. Separate point. I find it disappointing actually that it seems we've not done some kind of a wider consultation with the public in this area, given that this impacts them quite severely. And I just think it's unfair really to do things to people instead of with them. And if you had the public on side, whether Neuralite would perhaps do that consultation, I don't know, but it seems to me that would be the right thing to do. Get the public on side, then bring your application, and then everyone can make a nice informed decision, knowing that the public are on side or not, if that were the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm looking around. I see nobody else. Can I ask? No, I'm sorry, I'm not taking any from public, and I wouldn't take any more councillors other than members. Can I ask if anybody wants to propose the question be put? Yes. Any seconder? I see it proposed and seconded. So the question before us then is whether or not we are prepared to grant permission for the transport regulation order. And you can see that in front of us. Any points?
Yeah, we're just adding Councillor Burton's point of engaging with the Highways Authority on the road safety front. So if you don't mind including that in the delegation to me, I can address that.
So subject to that. Right, colleagues, can I now put this to vote? Those in favour of granting permission, please indicate. Those against? 3. Can I have a decision? 5-3?
That's correct. I've counted 5-3.
Right. So we are therefore granting permission subject to what we see in front of us and the additional consideration. Thank you very much. Thank those of you who've come to attend this. You may, of course, slip away if you want to, or stay to listen to the rest of the applications. I'll take a 5-minute break, well, 2 or 3 minute break. It's a long application. Right, thank you, colleagues. We now move on to the second item, which is 2025-1072, which is Coachfields, Northfleet Green, Northfleet Gravesend. We subsequently, this has been to us, well, in front of us twice. I'm conscious that there are three members who may not have been aware of a previous discussion which took place at the last meeting, I believe. So I'm just going to look across, and can you affirm that you've read the documentation? Yes, and likewise. So I've had, because it is relevant, what we were seeking was further information, I think. Right, thank you very much for that. Right, can we proceed with the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. As you've just pointed out, this is a supplementary report for the deferred decision on Coachfields in North Green, which is an application for the conversion of an equestrian barn to a single dwelling with associated parking. The slide before you just sets out the location of the site on the north side of Northfleet Green Road. The site is currently in an equestrian use consisting of a detached stable, horse exerciser and horse pennage. And this is an aerial view of the site. To the right is the remaining equestrian use, which will stay as such. And the aerial view also shows the existing parking on site adjacent to Northfleet Green Road. In terms of the additional information sought and provided, a summary is set out before you, and I'll just give it a quick read for everyone's benefit. The wider site is used solely for the rehabilitation of injured racehorses before rehoming. The existing barn was previously used for feed storage. The applicant has stated that it was never utilised to its full capacity. The full capacity of the site is for 18 horses. This number cannot be looked after at one time. Lower number of horses are looked after due to the level of care required. The feed storage has since been consolidated elsewhere within the stables, i.e. the site. And the existing barn, the subject of this application, is now considered to be surplus to requirements. As such, there's no change to the wider operation of the wider stables due to this particular barn itself being surplus to requirements. In addition to this, some clarity was sought in relation to some of the comments made at the previous meeting. There is a temporary washroom that has recently been added to this side of the feed barn. The applicant has advised via their agent that this would be relocated to the main stables in due course, and the proposed cycle store shown on the plans at the previous meeting would be located in the same area. In terms of parking, the proposed parking area for the residential use currently forms part of the wider equestrian use. The larger area of hard standing is informally used for parking and storage of equipment. A small area of that wider hard standing would be sectioned off for the residential parking, and the larger area still retained for the wider equestrian use and the associated vehicles. So that just leaves us with the recommendation that was before committee previously, and that's that planning committee grant approval to the scheme. It's subject to the conditions set out within the committee report previously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and I'm grateful for Councillor Milner at the previous meeting who did bring these issues to our attention, sought clarification. Right, I'm looking around at members of the committee first of all, if anybody wishes to ask any questions. No.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. So the building, the residential building, will be used for the people that are actually associated with the equestrian centre. Is that correct? Thank you.
There would be no formal restriction placed on that building. As such, it could be used by anyone.
any other questions? Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Chair. We're not directly privy to that information. My understanding is that the number of horses on site vary and is very much dependent on the care that's required. And normally the horses themselves would be stabled elsewhere and brought to this location when they need some form of care.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Just recalling something from the last meeting, just for those that weren't here. As far as I understood it, this was necessary because it helped them to look after the horses if they were on site, was what I think I understood from the last meeting. Thank you.
I think that was a point which was raised.
That's entirely correct. However, there wouldn't be any condition imposed limiting the use of the property to just those working in the equestrian centre, so to speak.
Thank you. I'm looking around for any other councillors who wish to ask for points of clarification. No. So then we'll move to speaker in support of the application, Mr. David Bedford, if you'd like to come forward. I think you've seen how the system works.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. You'll be glad that I won't use the full 3 minutes because you've heard of the core arguments already. So just to recap, that we are in the Greenbelt here, but for the reasons set out by the officers, we fit neatly within the Greenbelt exemptions. So there is no, it's not particularly controversial in Greenbelt policy terms. So I really wanted to just focus on this main query that was raised last time in terms of the operations of the site. So you would have seen the plans that were put up on the screen, I think, or certainly included in the report. You've got the building in question, which is the one on the left-hand side of the picture. Then you've got the main equestrian building in the central part of the site, and then you've got the sand school and the horse walker. So that central building is where there is accommodation for up to 18 horses. When that was potentially going to be at full accommodation, there was a need for additional grain store, feed stores and what have you, which is why the second building came about, so the one that's subject to this application. Things change over time, and what's become very apparent is you simply can't look after 18 injured racehorses. They're temperamental creatures, as you can probably understand. They suffer very significantly in terms of colic, under stress and what have you. So the operators have realised that you can't accommodate 18 horses at one time, which means there is surplus space available in that main building, and it is much more efficient to bring grain and ancillary facilities into that main building and have it all under one roof, which is why the building that we're talking about is now surplus to requirements. Hopefully that gives a bit more clarity, but in terms of the operation of the site as a whole and how it is always operated and will continue to operate, that is unchanged. We're simply talking about the repurposing of a surplus building. So that's hopefully giving you the clarity that you need. It's been touched upon, the application was considered, or an application was considered previously, which had some reasons for refusal. The applicant has chosen to go away and address all of those in full and come back to try and secure a local decision rather than appeal. So hopefully that gives you the clarity you need and you're able to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bedford. Any questions of information clarification? I see nobody looking across at any other councillors. No. Right, thank you very much. You may slip away. All right, colleagues, we've had this application, I think, before us. This is the third occasion. Any comments, any points of view from members of the committee? I see nobody. Therefore, can I ask for an indication as to whether you want the question to be put? Please. Thank you. I've seen it seconded. So we will put the question, and it's permission subject to conditions. Can I ask those to indicate support for that? Unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you. So that therefore brings us to the end of that application. And again, if anybody wants to slip away, you may do so. Which brings us on then to the final application, which is 20241170, which is 107 Vale Road, Northfleet, Gravesend. Richard, do you want to introduce us?
Thank you, Chair. The application is the demolition of existing single dwelling house and erection of replacement two-storey dwelling house with rear garden, cycle parking, refuse storage, driveway and air source heat pump at 107 Vale Road in Northfleet. So the site location plan shows the site located in Vale Road, and you'll notice there's a variety of different size houses and topography is varying on the road. The photographs on screen show the existing property, which is modest single-storey detached bungalow with no off-street parking provision. Due to the topography of Vale Road, the property is situated on a higher ground level than the highway and is accessed by steps. It's positioned between a pair of two-storey properties, which are representative of the wider street scene. This is an aerial view of the site. Okay, so this is the existing front elevations and the proposed elevations. The application will demolish the existing two-bedroom bungalow, replace with a four-bedroom, two-storey property with rooms in the roof space. It is proposed to excavate out the front garden to improve accessibility by providing ramped access as well as off-street parking. And this shows existing floor plans of the bungalow. And this shows the proposed two-storey replacement dwelling will provide a large family home with plentiful living space at ground floor level with two double bedrooms, one single bedroom and a family bathroom at first floor level and a further double bedroom with ensuite in the roof space. The recommendation to the planning committee is for permission to be delegated to the head of planning to grant planning permission subject to finalisation of planning conditions, including making any necessary modification, deletion or addition to the proposed conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions, comments, requests for information? No. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Was it clear on those pictures on the drawings where the heat pump is situated? I was just wondering. I was wondering what level of noise they create. I've known nothing about them. Thank you.
I'm not sure on those plans. My colleagues are going to get the plans up and on the website. But let me have a quick look on the floor plans. It may show us on the floor plans. No.
So, sorry, Chair. Normal practice is for the heat pump unit to go on the rear of the rear elevation, and they usually, well, they vary. Some are normally enclosed, and in terms of noise, they are actually that noisy. And I think I'll be corrected by, for example, Councillor Burden. They have been rolled out in a number of locations across the borough. So this is obviously a GBC property, and we would be using the same standards. When I say we the wider council, would be using a similar type of heat pump that we've used elsewhere in terms of heating the actual building itself. And today, environmental protection colleagues have been content with the noise output of those devices, and they are in reality now a standard feature of many new modern build homes, and they don't impact the amenity of local residents, whether it's the occupiers or neighbours, in a negative manner, but do bring benefits in terms of reducing energy bills and heating homes to a more regular level across the day. So that's in reality what would happen in this situation. Unfortunately, we don't have the plan in the presentation, so it's not something that I'm able to put up at this moment in time.
Thank you. Any other comments from colleagues? No. Shall we then move? Can I see a resolution to move? Thank you. Seconded. So let's move to the question. Have we got a slide? Which is, as you can see, we delegated the head of planning to grant planning permission subject to finalisation of planning conditions. Can I ask for a show of hands? Those in favour? Gosh, unanimous on two occasions tonight. Thank you. Right, that brings us back to the main agenda when I eventually find it. Reports for information, none. Plan applications determined under delegated powers. A copy has been placed in the usual space. There's no other business in Part B, nobody to be excluded. Therefore, can I bring the meeting to a conclusion? And thank you, good people, for attending once again. And we will no doubt meet again sooner rather than later. Thank you very much.